and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Tara Clancy, and I'm Marketing Executive for Morgan McKinley in Ireland. We're delighted to welcome back Talane Miedaner to present today's Success Series webinar on raising your emotional IQ. Talane is a life coach and owner of lifecoach.com and author of best-selling book, Coach Yourself to Success. Today, Talane will be talking to us about leveraging the laws of attraction to attract the people and opportunities you want. We'll learn some great tips on what your personal and emotional needs are and how to have them met, so they can effectively disappear and result in a renewed confidence effortlessly attract the people and opportunities to you. Before we get started, I just want to say that we're absolutely thrilled with the popularity of this webinar topic, with almost 1,400 registered, and 500 dialed in. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please email us at events@morganmckinley.com. Before we start, I'd like to run through some housekeeping tips. We'll be recording this webinar and it'll be available to you in the next few days on all of our websites. If you registered with us, you'll receive a link via email. If you're experiencing some technical difficulties, try logging out and logging back in. If your issue persists, don't worry, we have a recording. It'll be available to you as soon as possible. Questions will be taken via the question chat feature on your webinar control panel and will be discussed during our Q&A session at the end. We'll try our best to get as many questions as possible. We hope you enjoy the webinar, and please join in the conversation on Twitter using our Twitter handles @MorganMcKinley or @LaCreme_Ireland using the hashtags #SuccessSeries or #CareerAlly. So that's it from me, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce to you our speaker for the morning, Talane Miedaner.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're going to just jump right into our slides here. Let me get that going. Today we're talking about raising your emotional IQ, so I hope that's what you're here for. A little about me, you've heard I'm a coach. I've been coaching now for over 20 years. That's how I got lifecoach.com as a domain name. It's one of the first coaches in the world. And so sometimes, occasionally, the early bird does, in fact, catch the worm. And I work with clients and executives all over the world. We work by phone, and we have an online coaching program. And I've got 3 books that you can tap into for further reference or for your research. Coach Yourself to Success, which is the international bestseller. The Secret Laws of Attraction, and it's called, the subtitle is The Effortless Way to Get the Relationship You Want, and it's pegged as a relationship book, romantic relationship book, but we're actually going to see that it's professional as well, because we're going to talk about the needs today, about personal and emotional needs, and that book goes into depth about that topic. So that's the one we're really going to be basing today's webinar on. And then there's Coach Yourself to New Career. So if you're looking for a new career, that's a great book with exercises in it for you. But we'll go on to a little bit about what I do as a coach. Basically, in coaching, we work with people who have a gap between where they are now and where they want to be. Whatever that gap is, and the bigger the goal that you have, the better. In fact, some people, if they don't have a big goal, we can help them create a bigger goal. So we can expand your vision of what's possible for your life. So if you're feeling a bit stuck, don't worry about that, because we can even help you with that and find the right goal for you. People hire coaches for all sorts of reasons. Usually it's to be more successful in their careers. They want to either advance up in their careers, change careers, or start a new business. So people in the sort of a career transition or thinking, I'd like to do something different. We also always work with coaching can be extremely helpful for people in that phase. Also starting a new job and wanting to get the right impression. Those first 90 days are critical in a new job. And sometimes people just work with a coach to get those first few days off on the right start, because that's critical to your future business success. And then we even work with people who are retiring, who are thinking, I don't want to work 90 hours a week anymore, but I do want to do something. But I want it to be really rewarding and fulfilling. So even people who are moving into retirement, we can help as well. So we work with all sorts of different people, from musicians to professionals, executives, lawyers, all around the world, and we do that by phone. So that's what our coaching company does at lifecoach.com. We're not therapists. We're not consultants. Consultants you hire for a particular expertise or knowledge, and a therapist typically is working with unresolved issues from the past. Now that's a gross generalization, but generally that's what therapy has specialized in, and coaches do not deal with unresolved issues from the past. So that's why we're most like sports coaching, and we help people be more successful in their current situation. So basically we're working with people who are healthy, already successful and well. Maybe they're a bit stuck or frustrated, and they want to move forward in their life. That's what we do. So let's dive into our topics for today. We're going to cover quite a bit of information. And I'm going to, don't worry, I will have, in fact, I'm very deeply committed to getting your questions answered because this is it's a very profound topic, talking about our emotional needs and emotional intelligence. It's profound, and actually for a lot of people it's kind of scary even. So I'm going to take you through this, and some of the stuff you might have heard before, but hopefully I'll put it in a context for you that makes some sense. So we're going to talk about why is emotional intelligence important? Obviously you're here on this webinar because you think it is, but I'm going to tell you why I think it is. We're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and where our emotional intelligence falls in that hierarchy. I'm going to tell you how you can identify your own top 4 personal and emotional needs, and then, very critically, how to get those needs satisfied. And I'm going to address some of the common myths and perceptions that we have about our emotional needs. And then if we have some time, I'll even go into our values. So we'll see, people often get needs and values confused, so we'll sort that out. Hopefully there'll be some time for that too. So that's my goal, which is fairly ambitious for 1 hour, but let's go for it. First of all, why is emotional IQ important? I think you're here for your own reasons, but more often than not, people are interested in being more emotionally intelligent because they want to have better relationships. They want to effortlessly attract people and opportunities into their life. So if you feel like you're working too hard to meet the right people or make those connections or get noticed at work, or get the respect that you want from your boss or your colleagues, if you're struggling with any of those, that is actually down to our social intelligence, getting along with other people, as well as our emotional intelligence and understanding how your emotions could be impacting your career and your work and your relationships, both personally and professionally. So it's also important because knowing what you need to be your best, knowing what your personal and emotional needs are, is stage 2 in our personal growth and development. So Abraham Maslow has this hierarchy, and that's a critical piece of our growth as a human being. We all have needs. In fact, needs are requirements for us to be our best. Without satisfying our emotional needs, we cannot be our best. So that's why it's so critically important to get your needs met. And most people, if I tap people on the shoulder, I was just in a seminar last night, and I asked a whole room full of people, all professional, intelligent people, what their top 4 needs are, and nobody knew. So it's not, don't feel sad or bad or like you've missed out on this topic, because people don't talk about our needs. So nobody knows what their top 4 needs are. Very, very few people are clear on what those are. And yet, how can you actually claim emotional intelligence if you don't even know what your own top 4 emotional needs are? So it's rather a basic starting point, I would say. And then we look at why emotional intelligence is important. It's because it's a function of confidence. When people have their emotional needs satisfied, not only are they more content with their lives, but also they're more confident. It goes hand in hand with confidence. You feel satisfied, you feel confident, and we'll talk about how you can build your own confidence wherever it is now. I'm going to give you some tools to build your confidence as well. And then here's the number 1 reason. If our emotional needs are not fulfilled, we will be unconsciously or subconsciously repelling the very people we most want to attract. So that's the bad news. You guys know about this. You bump into somebody who's a bit needy at a party and you can't wait to get away from them. So, excuse me, I need to go to the bathroom or the loo. I need to get out of here quickly. So you make any excuse you can to get away from these needy people. Now that's overt neediness, and we're not all walking around overtly needy, but any unmet need that you have is going to be repelling people from you. So really important to figure that out if you want to attract people to you. Right, so that's our overview and why I think emotional IQ is so important and why we focus on it in this webinar. So it's lots of bennies from getting this sorted out. So let's go right back into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I did not come up with this plan, but I like it. He says first thing is we worry about physical survival needs, food and shelter. Well, that's fairly obvious, right? In our coaching program, we have a program called the Clean Sweep program that deals, it's a quiz, a 100-point quiz that tells you how well you're handling that physical survival. So that's a really good indicator of whether you're still struggling in life, because that's the level of struggle, or whether you've gone past that physical survival into the next level, which is fulfilling our emotional needs and our personal needs. Now, Maslow had said that there were about 8 core needs. Love, community, connection, and appreciation were some of the core needs he felt all human beings have and require. But in the field of coaching, we've identified over 100 different personal and emotional needs, and not everybody has the same needs to the same extent. So I'm going to help you sort those out as well. And then the third level of this hierarchy, the top really, is the values and peak experiences. And this is when I'm talking about values, I'm talking about not just what's of value to you, what's important to you, but also what you love to do. So this is the kind of stuff that you would do if you won the lottery, and then you took a 3-month holiday on the beach and were completely rested and rejuvenated, and then got to the point of being completely bored. And then you said, okay, I can do anything I want. I've got enough money to do whatever I want. These values would be the things you would choose to do. So it's what you would love to do. Money is not a question, so you're doing that not for the money, or not for any other reason, but just for the pure pleasure and joy of that, whether that's to lead and inspire people, or travel and have adventures, or be peaceful and meditative, whatever it is. So those values are also what this is the thing we work towards in coaching, is getting everybody to live a life that is completely oriented around your core values and passions. And then you start having these peak experiences on a regular basis. So that's Maslow's hierarchy, and it's a really good outline for what we do with coaching people. We take people through this hierarchy right from struggling and feeling stressed and struggled with life, just trying to get by and make ends meet. We want to get you well past that into this land of peak experiences. So I've asked you before, do you know what your own top 4 emotional needs are, or personal needs? And a lot of people, when I face them this quiz, might be able to think, okay, well, I know I need to be loved. Yeah, appreciation, that might be one. And then they draw a blank. So this is why it's so important for us to figure that out first. What do you need? You know, it gets a bit crazy because we think we go into relationships and get married, not knowing what our emotional needs are. I think that's a bit of a gap. All right, so here's some sample needs. Now, there's over 100, so this is just a partial list. And I've got the full list in the book, The Secret Laws of Attraction. But you won't even need to do this because I'm going to give you a cheating tool in a minute. This list of needs gives you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So there's to be loved and cherished, and under that your version of being loved might be to be admired or adored or held fondly. So that's in the love cherishing camp. There's the need to be appreciated and liked, which includes to be accepted, acknowledged, prized, worthy, honored, thanked, esteemed, included, valued, all subtle variations on the appreciation need. Then there's the need to be understood, or the need to be heard, and that's to be listened to make a point, the need to make a point. And under that we have the need to be right, to be deferred to not be mistaken, to be correct. The need for control. You've all met people who have the need to be in control, in power, in charge. Command, dominate, lead, manage, and influence. So that's another very common need. The need for abundance and luxury. It's funny, one of my clients was saying, yeah, this camping stuff is not for me. In fact, if I'm in a hotel and there's not a chocolate on the pillow, I'm roughing it. So she definitely ranks for this need for abundance and luxury. Need to be connected. Again, this is a fairly core one for a lot of people. A need for order, balance, and peace. My husband has the need for order, and he cannot sit down at his desk if it's messy. He has to clean it first because he can't think straight at a messy desk. My desk, on the other hand, he doesn't know how I work. I like order. I like that, but I tend to have a lot of papers spread all over the place. So I can still work and think without that. So I like order, but I don't need it to be my best. And this is the distinction with needs. When you come into a need, it is a requirement for you to be your best. It is not optional. And we tend to treat our needs as if they were optional, as if we could, oh, well, I can work at a messy desk. Well, not if it's your need. My husband absolutely does not feel comfortable, cannot focus, cannot do his best work unless he's in a tidy, clean environment. Of course, drives me crazy with the kids' toys in the house. But there you go. You've got to have those needs met or you won't be happy. And that is the difference. When it is a true need for you, you must have it to be your best. It's not just an option. So then we've got other needs to win. You might have met people who just are really poor losers. They probably have the need to win if they get really upset and irritable, even if you're playing a silly game like Monopoly or need to work, to be busy. Have you ever met people who just cannot relax? They just always need to be working, even if they're on holiday. They said, oh, let's build a fence or dig out the garden, or they just can't sit still, and they always need to work or feel like they're productive. The need for clarity and certainty. This is the need to be sure about things, to have things spelled out in precision and detail oftenly. The need to be independent and free, not restricted. Again, another common need. It's about not having somebody tell you what to do, for example. So if you have that need, you might, if you're working in a company, you need to have a bit of free reign, some independence to do your work without close supervision. Then there's the need to be supported or attended to, cared for, given gifts, nurtured, taken care of. And then the need for touch and be touched, held tenderly, caressed. And again, this is different for all people. I know some people, they don't like being touched. So you can't assume that everybody has the same needs. And the need to achieve and get results. Now, there's more needs, but these are some of the most common and come up fairly often for people. So it's likely that your 4 needs are somewhere on this list. Now, this is the old way of doing things, but we came up with a way to find out what your needs are that's even easier, in the style of a cosmopolitan quiz. Not complicated. Do not get scared about this. This quiz is free. It's on my website at lifecoach.com. It takes about 20 minutes because we're sorting out over 100 different needs to find out what your top 4 needs are. So I wouldn't do it right now because it does take about 20 minutes to complete, and you want to focus on that. But this is the tool we've found works really well for people to figure out what their own top 4 needs are. The problem with looking at that list I just gave you before is that people tend to pick the needs they like to have, not the needs they actually have. And for example, I had a client who, she's a successful woman in business, and she had the need to be in control. And she didn't like the fact that she had that need because she didn't think it was very feminine. She thought that's a man's need. And I will tell you right off the bat, needs are not sexist. There's men who have the need to be adored, and there's women who have the need to be in power and control, and the need to be right. So it's not, they don't care whether you're a man or a woman. Needs will get you any which way they can. So you got to erase this notion that some needs are feminine and some are masculine. Men can have some of the more feminine sounding needs, and women can have some of the more masculine sounding needs. So let you do that in your own time. That's your homework. Coaches always give people homework, so there's your homework for today. Figure out what your own top 4 needs are so that you can answer that question. Rather critical if you want to be emotionally intelligent. All right. So now I'm going to assume that you have a chance later to take that quiz. And then when you come back to it, you're going to ask, all right, now that I have these 4 needs in hand, how am I going to get these needs satisfied? How am I going to meet these needs? Because it's one thing to know what they are. I mean, that's a good starting point. But you're going to be left with this question, okay, now what do I do about them? And there's one thing that's absolutely critical to getting needs met, and that is boundaries. And actually, boundaries are relevant to confidence. I promised you you'd become more confident when you go through this process, and you will. And part of that reason is because you're going to put in place bigger boundaries than you might have had before. So boundaries are just what people can't do to you or around you anymore. So boundary, for example, could be people can't show up late if they're meeting me. And oftentimes when you look at that, when you have a boundary, that's protecting a particular need. So for example, if you're irritated when people are late, you might feel they're not respecting you. And so that need to be respected could be the need that's there. If people interrupt you when you're speaking, that might be the need to be heard or understood or to make a point. And if people interrupt you, you can't get that need met. See, not everybody's bothered when some people are late. Not everybody's bothered if they're interrupted. So again, what irritates us or annoys us can often help us see what our core unmet needs are. But because you have that need, and remember, they're not optional, so you're going to have to get them met. If you have that need, you need to put in place a boundary to protect that need and give it a chance to be fulfilled. So if you have the need to be heard and people are always interrupting you, you're never going to feel satisfied. You're never going to feel that your need is being satisfied or met. because people are always interrupting you. Nobody hears you. And so you're not going to be happy. You're going to be very dissatisfied. And that's what we find is unmet needs lead to discontent and dissatisfaction. And they can even lead to depression, actually. If deprived long enough, if you need to be loved and cherished and are deprived of that, you can get depressed and then ill, and people can even die. So it's pretty serious stuff. So how do you get these boundaries in place? I would like everybody to think of, did I talk more about boundaries? No. Oops, there we go. Missed one. There we go. The boundaries, if you think about a boundary as a moat around the castle, it's there to protect you, but there's the drawbridge that enables the nice guys to come and visit. And our boundaries are like that. If we don't have boundaries, and you'll meet people, or you might be one of these people, and you've been burned and hurt badly in relationships because of the lack of boundaries, you end up putting up a wall. And walls just keep everybody out because it's not safe. So actually, boundaries are critical for us to get into relationship with people, to be safe, and to truly be intimate with people. So absolutely essential for all relationships because it's not safe. If you don't have boundaries at work, you won't get promoted because people won't respect you. You'll be considered a doormat. And if you don't have boundaries in personal relationships with your loved ones, you won't have intimacy. You will lose out on that. So really, really important to have strong boundaries and much bigger boundaries than you think you need. So a basic boundary is people can't hit me. To make that a bigger boundary, you'd move it to people can't yell at me. If you want to expand that even further, you might have the boundary people can't make rude remarks to me or put down jokes about me. To people can't give me unsolicited feedback or criticism. So that can be a really big boundary. You can even have the boundary people can't be fighting in my vicinity. They might not be, I don't like that. I don't like people arguing around me. So that's even one of my boundaries is that people can't argue around me. I don't like it. And so what do you do then? It's okay, well, how can you control other people? You can't control other people, but you can use this powerful four-step communication model to inform people that they've crossed your boundaries. Okay, so here's how it works. I'm going to share this little tool with you. Very useful in all settings. The four-step model works with everybody. It works with children, works with bosses, colleagues. So you can use this with everybody. Strangers, people you haven't met, you can use the four-step model. Very, very professional tool, and it gives you the communication skills you need, which will help you show up as being more emotionally savvy and intelligent in relationships. It's very simple. We start with inform. So the first step in the four-step model is inform, and that is just to hold up a mirror and reflect back what people are saying, what they've done. So you could say something like, do you realize you just interrupted me? Or do you realize you're 15 minutes late? Do you realize you're yelling at me? And you notice I use an absolutely flat, neutral tone of voice. I'm not saying, do you realize you're 15 minutes late? I'm not yelling, I'm not shy, I'm not being sarcastic, I'm not being righteous or judgmental. Just flat, just the same way you would say the sky is blue, do you realize you're 15 minutes late? Just like that. So, to get people into that mode, the neutral voice, it helps sometimes to count to 10 if you're angry, or take a deep breath. Take a step back, I often think the sky is blue, and then I say what I want to say. But if you can deliver that in form, in a neutral tone of voice, 90% of the time you'll never need to go to steps 2, 3, or 4. That is just nipping the thing in the bud, because now people know what your boundaries are, and you've given them a graceful exit, which is really important. People need to know that they can kind of get out of it, like, oh no, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize the time. Oh, of course you didn't. I know you respect me. So you reinforce the need there. You see how that works very subtly? So not only do you do that, you've reinforced what your need is to be respected. You've reinforced the positive behavior that you want. And I can bet you they probably won't show up late the next time. But you've done it very gracefully, and you've nipped it in the bud immediately when it happens. That's the ideal time. Now, let's say you didn't at the moment. And women often have a problem putting in place boundaries because they think it's not nice. That if you have boundaries, you're not nice. And so as a result, women often end up getting taken advantage of, walked all over. They don't express what they're really feeling because they're trying to be nice or to be liked. Oftentimes people think if they have the need to be liked, they may have weak boundaries as well. And the irony is that it's the boundaries that actually have people like you and respect you. And without that, you can't get your needs met. So it's absolutely essential to being in positive and healthy relationships. So inform is the first step. If they don't get it at inform, which again, most of the time, that's all you'll ever need to do. And in fact, when we're talking about friends and family, people, you might not have had boundaries with them for years. Maybe you don't have a boundary with a sibling or parents, and kids often grow up, they don't know about boundaries. They didn't know that they could have boundaries with their parents because they're kids, and but you can. So at this point in your life, you might say, hey, you know, for the last 40 years or whatever, I've allowed this behavior to occur, but I wanted to let you know that it actually bothers me, or it makes me feel uncomfortable, or whatever. Just say the truth about how you feel, and just inform them and say, you know, I'd prefer that you didn't do that thing, whatever that boundary is, around me or to me anymore. So that's very simple, and you can start, even if it's been years and years, you realize that you've trained them badly as to how to treat you. And boundaries are just going to be retraining and re-educating the people around you as to what you need to be your best. So step two, if they don't get it at step one, is to request. And that is to ask. You've done the inform, and now you'll notice inform isn't even asking. So it's just stating a fact. It's not asking them to do anything. Request, we actually ask people to do something. So the second time somebody shows up late, you might say, this is the second time we've met and you've shown up late. I request that if you meet me in the future, you show up on time. Now, you might even put in some consequences and go up to step three and say, if you don't, I will wait 15 minutes, and then I'll leave. That would be step three, consequences. So you might leave it at request this time, and the next time move it up to consequences. It's up to you. But it depends on how important that is to you to get that sorted out right away. But you could just request, I ask that you meet me on time. And that's it. Again, neutral tone of voice. And you can use this, you know, I ask that you stop yelling at me now, or let's pick up this conversation later when we're not angry with each other. So you can make a request. Demand and insist is to get a bit tougher yet. So this is step three. Rarely do you ever have to go here, but if you have children, you will have to go here every time. They will test you all the way to see if your boundaries are real. I have 2 kids, so I can tell you they will guaranteed will take you right to step three, and if you don't have consequences in place, you're in trouble as a parent. So this is where demand and insist, you need to have some serious consequences in place. So, you know, if you stay on your iPad when I'm trying to talk out to you, I'm going to have to take your iPad away for the next week. Or if you don't pick up the toys on your floor in the next half hour, I'm coming up here with the garbage bin to put your toys away and give them to charity. So again, in that neutral tone of voice, you don't need to actually yell at children. They'll get consequences. But you do need to probably throw a few toys away or sequester the iPad for a week so that they know you're serious. And then they will take you seriously. But even with adults, sometimes we have to have those consequences and take it that far. You know, this is, if it's a requirement for you, which needs are, you need to be prepared to have some consequences and think about what you'll do if the person does not honor or respect your boundaries. And sometimes they won't. Some people won't be interested in honoring your boundaries. Some people won't be able to for whatever reason. Some people just just won't. And at that point, you have the choice to leave. And sometimes we leave a relationship or a job permanently because they do not respect our boundaries. I had a client who was working for a boss, and he was just, I was making lewd remarks and putting down the women in the workplace that he was working with. And I told her, well, use your 4-step model on him, and she did. And she went, informed him and said, do you realize that was a sexist comment? Just like that. And then she said, I asked that you not speak to me that way. And so he stopped picking on her. Amazing. Boundaries are powerful, and the 4-step model really works. But then everybody else in the office was still getting picked on, and she just thought, you know what? I don't want to work for this guy. And she got a job somewhere else with a great boss and wonderful people to work with and higher salary to boot. So I've never seen it. There may be some initial pain when you leave a situation that's unpleasant. But what we often see is people jump to number 4. They leave first before going through inform, request, and demand. They say, well, I'm just leaving. I'm out of here. And they're not giving people a chance to course correct. And that's not really fair, is it? And he corrected his behavior with her, but she didn't push it. She could have gone and said, well, you can't do any of the women around me either. You can do it. You can have boundaries that are that large. I was once years ago before I was married, I was dating a guy, and he had been divorced from his wife, and he had 3 kids. And I went to his house to pick up the kids. We were going to go do something with the kids, and he was having an argument with his daughter. And I said one of my boundaries is people can't argue around me. So it's a pretty big boundary. But my first tendency was to tiptoe out of the room. I was going right to number 4, leave. And I wait a minute, what about my boundaries? So I went in and said, well, let's start with number 1, inform. I went back in and said, do you realize your arguing disturbs me? That's it, just really, even with personal stuff. Immediately they apologized and said, oh, so sorry, and they stopped arguing. I thought, wow, this is amazing. But it really works. It works in every situation. I've had people use this with their bosses. Again, boss had a client boss was always calling her at night, at 9 o'clock at night, and on weekends, and scheduling meetings on weekends. And she was afraid to say anything because it was her boss, and thought, oh gosh. But she really didn't like it, and she felt that it was impacting her work because she wasn't getting a chance to rest and recover and start the next day fresh. And so I said, well, you've got to tell them you've got a boundary. You can't call me in the evenings because that's my personal time. And you can't have me come in for meetings on a Sunday because that's my day off. And so she had to put that boundary, you can't use my personal time for work, in place with her boss. And that's a scary thing to do. I said, well, use this model because it's a professional model, and it's one that you can use with your boss if you keep to that neutral tone of voice. So the next time he called her at night, she just said, you know, I know you've been calling me at night, but actually I consider the evenings to be my personal time. Can we handle this in the morning? He's like, oh, okay. He called her the next night again just to kind of test it, and she said, yeah, it's the evening. This is my personal time. And then he'd booked a Sunday meeting, and of course, none of the other staff enjoyed these Sunday meetings either. And she said to him, look, the weekends are my personal time, and there's no reason why we can't come in early on a Monday and prepare for this event, or do it on a Friday. So let's do it on a Friday instead, because I'm not coming in on a Sunday. And everybody in the team was so delighted because they were all too cowards to say anything because he's a big chief boss and head honcho in the company. So they were all too scared to say anything. But as a result of her having very simple and professional boundaries, the whole team benefited because they now didn't have Sunday morning meetings. So it's a simple thing. And he actually respected her that she had these boundaries and was saying, no, I don't work on a Sunday. So, you know, if there was some extraordinary event, she'd be fine, but not as a regular thing. So that's what she said. You know, if there is an extraordinary event, that's one thing. We'll all come in and work and pitch in as a team. That's fine. But it's just bad business management, really, if you can't get your work done during the week. So that's how you can use these 4-step models. And just inform is usually all you ever have to do. She didn't have to go. She did request the second time, but she never went to consequences or potentially leaving her job, which might have done if he said, well, no, this is the way the company works. We all work on weekends, and that's the way it is. Well, she should have found that out before she took the job. But then she has a choice, doesn't she? She can leave the job. So let me explain what this next point is, install an automatic sprinkler system. This is about getting your needs met on an automatic basis. When you think about our need for food, so going back to Abraham Maslow's survival needs, we take our need to eat pretty seriously. In fact, we have an automatic system to handle our need to eat, and that's called a refrigerator. So this automatic system, we plug into our walls, and we have a huge distribution of food in the modern world. Of course, the non-developed countries are still struggling with food distribution, and they don't have refrigerators, so they're still working on this. But in the developed countries, we've got that handled. So now our problem is actually over-fulfillment of the need, because the moment we have the tiniest twinge of hungry, we walk over to our automatic food container system and eat something out of the fridge. I think I'll have a sandwich. So we eat whenever we feel even the slightest twinge of hunger. As a result, we're actually over-fulfilling the need for most people. But basically, this is the power of the automatic system. Once you have a food distribution setup where we have the farmers and the supermarkets and food delivered to your door and get food delivered to you, restaurants, we've got this thing handled. And so well handled that now it's excess. Different problem, but yeah, we'll talk about over-satisfaction of needs is another issue. But right at the moment, for most people, we need to work on just getting those basic needs satisfied. But this automatic sprinkler system, in terms of needs, looks like 5 friends and family members doing something for the next 8 weeks to satisfy your top 4 needs. So I wouldn't get them to just pick one need per person. So say you've got your 4 needs. One of my needs is to be cherished. And so I had 5 friends and family members do one thing a week to cherish me. And that's what my sprinkler system was, this automatic needs satisfaction. Because we take our food seriously, we don't actually take our needs that seriously. So I get to give you this request that you ask 5 people to meet at least your top need. And you may need to put in place some boundaries as well on your own and start informing people what your boundaries are so that your needs have a chance of getting met. So whether you have your need for peace and balance and want your evenings for that, and friends and bosses certainly cannot call you in the evenings, that's a boundary. So you may need to get your need for peace and balance met, you need to put in place that boundary. Again, and everyone's needs are different. You've seen the list. Take the quiz. You'll find out what your own needs are, and then you need to look at what those boundaries are, and then you start asking people. All right, so that is actually the process for getting our needs met and satisfied completely. It's simple. There's nothing here that's complicated, but I'll tell you one thing, it's challenging. When people are faced with asking their friends and family to meet their needs, suddenly they get all wobbly. Like, oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't ask somebody. That's embarrassing. Well, it's precisely because it's been difficult for you to ask somebody to meet your needs that the need is unfulfilled for you and occurs as an unmet need. Once our needs are satisfied, they disappear. And think about it. You're really hungry. You go need a sandwich. You're not hungry anymore. Disappeared. And so if you have a regular system, refrigerator on hand at any time, your need for hunger rarely even appears in the modern world. In fact, it's almost a problem that we're not hungry. So that can happen with your emotional needs as well. It can be that they're so well satisfied that they effectively disappear as needs. They don't even show up as needs in your life. So that's when neediness and all vestiges of neediness disappear, and you're more attractive because you don't need anything from people. And that's when neediness is repellent. We can sense, we can feel when people need us. That desperation makes us run from them. And if you're needy or too desperate, and think about it, if you're going for a job and you're desperate to get the job, you might actually push yourself right out of that job because of being too desperate or needy. But if you don't need the job because you're already employed and you're going for an interview, you're more likely to get the job. It's a statistic. People who are unemployed have a harder time getting a job than people who are employed. So not fair, right? But that's a statistic. So it's because you don't need it. And when you don't need it, you're more attractive. Even at the bank, if you go in and say you have a bad credit history, but you have $50,000 in savings, and they go to the loan and say, oh, I'd like a loan. Well, you have a bad credit history, but we'll secure your $50,000 and give you a loan because you don't need a loan. You've got money. So it's complete irony, right? When you actually need the money and you're desperate because you got to pay off all those credit card debts, they won't touch you with a 10-foot pole. They'll tell you, you're overextended. You've got too much debt. We're not going to help you. So the needier you are, the more desperate you are, the less likely you are to get the thing you need to solve your problem. And it's the same in relationships. The one who's got loads of friends and is really confident doesn't need more friends. Well, that's the one everybody wants to be friends with. So it's very subtle. Needs work at a very subtle level. And we sense them. We're extremely sensitive to neediness at any level. And that's why it's so important to set up this sprinkler system and automate your needs satisfaction. So that basically what you're doing is educating the friends and family around you to what you need to be your best. And it might be a bit of re-education for people who might have been crossing your boundaries. All right. So let me just talk about this. Is what usually people come up to at this point. They say, well, wait a minute. If I have to ask my partner or my loved one to meet my needs, that will ruin it. It'll spoil it. So that's the biggest one. That was number 3. People tend to think, if I ask for it, that spoils it. I shouldn't have to ask. If he loved me or she loved me, they should know what I need. They should just be able to divinely intuit what I need. But I think you can start to see that that's actually a pretty ridiculous notion. If we can't articulate our own top 4 needs, how can you expect somebody else, even if they love you and live with you, to know what your top 4 needs are? But plus, they probably have a different set of needs than you do. So what you see happening a lot is people doing unto others what they want done unto them. So people with the need to appreciation usually give out a lot of appreciation. I had a client once, and every week she was sending me a little note of appreciation. And I figured out pretty quickly, I said, I think you might have the need to be appreciated. And she did. Of course, it was her number one need. And so what she was doing as a strategy to get this need fulfilled was sending notes of appreciation out to all the people in her life all the time. And I said, actually, what you need to do is just ask them to appreciate you, because I don't have the need to be appreciated. So it's nice. It doesn't bother me that you send a note of appreciation. I think that's nice, but it doesn't actually fulfill my need. So you're wasting your time because people want what they need, not what you need. And this is where the whole do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule, doesn't necessarily work in the realm of needs because people are doing what they need, not what you need, which is completely different or could be completely different. So let's start with number one, and we'll go backtrack. It's bad, weak, or unattractive to have needs. This is one of the most common myths that we have. And people know, we sense that neediness is unattractive, so we think if I tell somebody about my needs, then they'll know I'm needy. And that's definitely a bad thing. I don't want to appear weak. So I certainly don't want to tell anybody, oh, I have this need to be cherished, or I have a need to be heard. Could you hear me out for 10 minutes and not say anything? Or you don't want to tell anybody about that because you go, oh, then they'll know I'm needy. But it actually is very refreshing. It makes you appear really confident when you go up to somebody and you say, hey, you know what, I really need to be heard. Is it all right if I just talk and you just listen for about 10 minutes? When I'm ready for you to put your input in, I'll let you know. And get your need to be heard met. So you really come out really direct with that. And then people can say, well, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time to do that. That's fine. Then ask somebody else. But most of the time, you'll see people will say, yeah, okay, sure, I can do that. But they didn't know you had the need to be heard unless you tell them about that. And now they know that what your needs are. If this is a friend or family member, they'll know that about you in the future. And you can set up your sprinkler system. Hey, can I call you once a week and just talk? Can you just listen? Would you be willing to do that for me? And people will say, yeah, okay. And it doesn't appear bad, weak, or unattractive. In fact, it's the reverse. People really think, wow, this person is really courageous. They're willing to be so vulnerable. And it makes you look strong and courageous when you can be that vulnerable with people. And people really tend to feel honored when they're asked to fulfill somebody's needs. Most people feel honored. Not everybody. There will be people who are just not able to meet your needs. Some people are just struggling with their own problems. They don't have the capacity or the ability to fulfill your needs, and they might even be your parents. So we can't always rely. It's nice if we can get our parents to meet our needs, but not everybody has the capacity or ability to do that. So don't worry about that. Just ask somebody who does. Get somebody else to fulfill your needs. It's really important. You might need to sort of adopt new parents who can act as parent figures for you, friends who can hear you out, whatever your needs are. So that's one myth. It's bad or unattractive. All human beings have emotional needs. You cannot escape that fact. The only difference between those who appear needy is that they haven't done such a good job of getting their needs met. And part of the problem is nobody knows what their needs are, so we're shooting around in the dark trying to guess. We're doing crazy things, and people will overspend in an attempt to get a need. I used to do that for shopping. I was trying to get my need to be cherished met by shopping. Boy, did I rack up those credit card debts, because you can't get enough of what you don't really need. You can never get enough of what you don't really need. So you can shop and buy shoes and whatever until the cows come home, but you will not get enough to satisfy an unmet need, because that's not what you really need. What you need is something different. You need the appreciation or somebody to listen to you or whatever your need is. Then the biggest myth we have, and women particularly are guilty of this one, and that's that the love of our life should not only know what all our needs are, but should fulfill all of our needs without us asking or telling them what we need. Now, this is just absolutely ridiculous expectation. It's a ridiculous expectation because if you don't know your own top 4 needs and can't articulate what they are, which most people can't, how do you expect this poor guy or gal to meet your needs? They have different needs. It's really a ludicrous assumption that we go into relationships thinking that this person should be able to know what our needs are and fulfill them all. But that is the unspoken expectation that most people have when they enter relationships. And sometimes we even do this with our bosses. We expect them to be parental figures for us. And people go in having these unspoken needs that they expect their boss to fulfill. Again, not good for your career. You'll be much more likely to be promoted and successful at work if you get your needs met from friends and family. You can do it at work, too. You just have to be careful how you do it. But you can. I've had clients who've asked their boss for appreciation. Say, oh, tell me what you liked about this project I worked on. And they got their appreciation need met that way by focusing on, tell me what worked about this for you. And so you can get some of the needs met. Obviously, you don't want to do the be touched or held fondly at work, so that could backfire on you. But some are more appropriate for home situations. Do unto others. We did that one. Real men don't have needs. This is another big myth that people have, that men don't have needs, which is ridiculous because men do have needs. They're human beings, and they can have needs just like women do. It is part of being human. So of course men actually have needs. Women, sometimes we secretly think that we don't want our men to have needs because again, it's that association with being weak. So men don't want to often admit that they have needs. Women don't either, for that matter. Nobody wants to, but it has this reverse effect. You can't actually hide your needs. You can only get them fulfilled, and then they go away. And then the other idea is that having needs is unpleasant. But actually, we've seen with the need to eat, for example, we were just went for a great restaurant last night, and I wish I could have had room to eat more because the food was so good. But my need to eat was fulfilled. I was full. And actually, being hungry is a really wonderful sensation if there is food there to satisfy it. Now, if you're starving out in Africa somewhere, not so much fun. But in a restaurant where there's lots of lovely food to eat, being hungry is a good thing. It's like, wow, I wish I were hungrier. Then I could eat more. But eventually you fill up. And it's the same with needs. If there's somebody around there who can satisfy your needs, it's actually a really pleasurable, wonderful thing to be loved, to be held fondly, to be cherished, to be heard, to be understood, to win, if that's your need. If you can have a way of fulfilling that need, then the need itself isn't bad. It's actually quite pleasurable and fun to get your needs fulfilled. So it's just like eating in a good restaurant is. It's when there's nobody around to fulfill your needs that it gets really bad. So this is why you want to have lots of friends and family members who care about you. All right, so that's just a few of the myths. I've got more that we address in detail in the book, but it gives you a flavor that we have a lot of misperceptions about our emotional needs. I think, gosh, I want to open up the floor. We can go into the values, but should we open up the floor and do some questions now? I think we have a couple of questions in, and then if we've got some more time, I'll dive into some of the values as well. Do we have any that have come in? Oh, here's a question here. Do your emotional needs change at certain points throughout your life? So that's a really good one. So we look at, do your needs actually change? And I would say actually they don't. We have our core needs, and for example, I've got the need to be cherished, and I think my mom says, well, you were born with that need because of your two sisters. I have two sisters. I, as a baby, needed more holding, more cuddling than my two sisters did. So even as a baby, I came born into this world needing to be cherished. Sometimes our needs are a result of abuse. Some children have been neglected, abused, which is tragic, and that's what causes their neediness. But again, it doesn't matter whether your past was you were just born into having that need or whether it was something that was created because of a lack as a child. It doesn't actually matter because the needs fulfillment is the same. And the process, the boundaries, asking and making your sprinkler system, it's the same. So you don't have to worry about why you have those needs or where they came from. And they don't really change throughout your life, but it can appear that they do. And I've had people take the emotional index quiz and say, oh, I did this a couple of years ago. I've retaken it, and new needs came up this time. And I think why that can happen is that at different times in our lives, different needs are being fulfilled. So, for example, I had a client, and she was working. She hired me because she thought she was going to get fired from her job as a journalist. And she was really nervous about losing her job. She loved being a journalist. She loved to write. That was her passion. And yet she was about to be fired, and she was really concerned. And she said, what can I do? And I had to take the quiz, and it turns out she had the need for peace as one of her top 4 needs. And we were talking about her work situation, what happened. It turns out she used to have a private office, and then her company, so she was happy and doing her work well then, but then her company changed and redid the whole floor plan and went to an open floor plan. And so everybody was in cubicles in an open space. It was really loud, really noisy, and the fact was she couldn't think straight because, again, a need is a requirement to be your best. It's not optional. So she was struggling in this new work environment because there's no peace. So I said, all right, well, this is not optional. You have to. And her friends would say, oh, well, just wear headphones or whatever. It wasn't working for her. So you have to get your needs met, or you can't be your best. So if she had to go in and negotiate with her boss and say, hey, look, I'm struggling because I can't think straight here. I need some peace and quiet. Can I work in the conference room? Can I work 2 or 3 days a week at home and just come in for the meetings? Could I work in the Starbucks around the corner, which was oddly quieter than her office? So anything that she could do to get some peace back into her life. And he agreed. And so she said, even if we just do it as a trial and you can see if things improve from there, we could immediately see within 2 weeks she was a new person again and back to her old on form. And she saved her job. But it was because this need for peace had not been identified, and she was treating it as if it were optional, and it's not. So that's when knowing what your needs are can help you know what you need and know to be strong enough to make the requests for what you need to be your best. So I think if you look at that need changing, she didn't notice that she had the need for peace because she had a peaceful life. But then the circumstances in her life changed, and all of a sudden it appeared that she had this need for peace. So that's what can happen if you're in a relationship and this person's really great at meeting your need to be loved, and then you break up, and all of a sudden that need rises to the surface. That can happen. So there might be somebody in your life that you either end a relationship with or you lose that person, and they were meeting your needs. If they're gone, then that need might surface and suddenly appear because it's now unfulfilled. And remember, when they're satisfied, they disappear. You don't notice them. People don't notice them. But when they're not satisfied, that's when you notice them. So again, really great question. Do we have another question here? Do you want to do values? Let's talk about this values, because this is the third level of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy that I talked about. And this is a list here of, it's a partial list. I couldn't get them all in, but just to kind of give you the flavor of what values are. Remember I was talking about winning the lottery and that you could do whatever you wanted to do. And our values are really our passions. It's what we would do regardless of how much money we had. So this is the stuff that you just enjoy doing for the sake of it, for the joy of it. And our values, this is where we feel not just, the needs give us satisfaction and contentment, but values, this is where we get fulfillment, euphoria, joy, happiness. This is where all that good stuff comes from. And that's from orienting your life around your core values. And there might be some work involved in doing that, but it's worth spending some time thinking about what might be your values. Now, we don't have a quiz for this because values are easy compared to needs. Needs we don't want to have, but everybody wants to do their values. That's fun. That's the easy stuff. So you don't even need a quiz for this. You can just look at a list and read through the words and say, oh, yeah, I want my life to be about that. That would be great. And so pick the words, just circle the words that come up for you. And again, you can get the complete list. I've got in the True Values program, which we have in Coach Yourself to a New Career, as well as in the Secret Laws of Attraction book. So both of those have the values exercises in them. But you can see it's really important if you're going to orient your life around happiness and fulfillment to know what your values are as well as your needs. But what happens is people get them mixed up a little bit, and they think that their needs are their values, or they get a little bit confused. For example, the need for peace for this client who was working in that busy office, that was a requirement. Now, another person sitting next to her could feel like, yeah, I wish it was a little bit quieter in here, but she could still get her work done. That's an optional thing, so then that would be a value. She might value peace, but it's not a requirement for her to do her work. So there's a subtle distinction here between needs and values. Needs we have to be our best. And without them being fulfilled, we feel, well, that dissatisfaction, we might show up as less than our best self. Like you might get irritable, you might be annoyed. Remember I said earlier on, if somebody interrupts you and you get annoyed, that's an indication that you might have that need for it to be heard. Not always, but again, it usually correlates. So again, when you find yourself getting a little bit irritated or annoyed by the people around you or whatever circumstance is going on, take a close look, because that's a pretty good indication that there's an unmet need there. Now, when our values aren't met, we don't necessarily show up as being irritable or crabby or depressed or apathetic. Our values can be a little bit optional in life. So you can go through your whole life with just getting to need satisfaction and have a satisfied and content life. You don't have to have your values to be content. That's at the needs level. But the euphoria and the joy and the happiness comes from our values. That's the next level up. So yeah, you can have a perfectly satisfying life, but you might be missing out on this really juicy stuff at the top here. So I definitely recommend working on orienting around your values and figuring out what those are. It's worth doing a bit of introspection and doing some investigation to figure out which of those values are yours. And starting to do a project. What I get my clients to do is pick a core value, something that's jumping off the page at them. One of mine is to travel and have adventures. I love traveling. And so I orient my career around doing that. So that's why I'm a professional speaker. So I can go to great places like Dublin and see a new town and experience new places. And that fulfills one of my core values for travel and adventure. Somebody else might think, oh, in fact, one of my clients said this, Talane, I want no part of that adventure. She doesn't want any of that. She wants peace. She wants to stay at home where it's peaceful and, and do her gardening. So completely different set of values. Everybody's different, so your values are going to be different as well, and your set of needs will be different. We're all unique. So you can get your emotional cues, again, life coach to figure out what your needs are. Remember, those are going to be more important in our hierarchy, and then you can work on your values. So I recommend doing them in that order. Don't mix it up. We've got more resources for you, so if you wanted to work on the boundaries, I recommend the Secret Laws of Attraction. That's got a whole section there on how to get your needs met. I have a whole very long chapter going through each need and say, okay, if you have the need to be heard, here's some ways that you could potentially get it met. Here's how other clients have done it. And you can use those as a guideline to see, can I get my needs met this way? So I actually spell it out on how you can get your needs met, because that's the stumbling point. After you know what your needs are, that's where people struggle. Coach Yourself to Success has 101 tips in it, so if you found any of these tips helpful, there's even more in that book. And that little gold seal that you see there is good for 30 days of free online coaching. So if you get the book, it comes with 30 days of our online coaching program. And then the New Career has a lot of exercises on the values that we were talking about, so you can do some exercises and figure out what your own core values are. So all full of useful stuff that you can use. Our career change coaching kit we've got for those changing careers. We do have a coaching kit, which I haven't really talked about. This has some computerized assessments in it that can help you figure out what your natural abilities and talents are. We're hardwired from the age of 13 with certain hardwired abilities, and we can use a scientific and objective assessment to find out what those are. So if you are ready for a new career, we do have a special kit that's designed with a couple of these motivational report as well, what your values are. It will test you on that, and 6 hours of audio explanation. So we've got this. So if you are looking to change careers, we can help you with that too. Anything else? Our online program. Oh, we've got a special promotion code for Morgan McKinley. I should tell them about that. We do our online coaching, which comes free for the first month, is normally $97 a month, and that includes live monthly coaching calls with me in a group format. So that's you'll still get to talk to me directly and ask any question you want. We're doing a special 50% off promotion for Morgan McKinley. You do need to enter this promo code in, and that will give you 50% off for the whole year's program. So not just the first month, but 50% off for the whole entire year of the program. So it's a really great opportunity for Morgan McKinley's people. So feel free to take advantage of that. And I think we've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Any other questions? We have a question that's just come in. Here's the question. You mentioned setting boundaries for another person's behavior that is unacceptable to you. But what about your own personal boundaries for yourself? Well, that's a really good question. That actually brings up the point of the distinction between personal boundaries are actually standards. So boundaries are what we have to protect us from other people, and standards is the conduct that we hold ourselves to. So when you have a standard, you might have a standard of, I never yell at people. I always show up on time. Boundaries are always written in the negative. Nobody can interrupt me. Nobody can take advantage of me. So boundaries, you write those down as the negative, what people can't do to you anymore. And standards you write as the conduct you want to have. So you might think of somebody you admire and then think about what their behavior is and write those down as your new standards. Standards is the conduct you want to achieve yourself. So it should make you stretch a bit from where you are now. So those would be some typical standards. But yeah, that's a really good question. Do we have time for one more? Okay. Oh, here's another one. Is it important to exercise self-discipline in order to be happy? Now, that's a really good question. It is so interesting. Discipline. I actually say you don't need discipline if you have this structure for support. I was thinking when people, discipline is really hard to muster up. It's really hard. We can usually sustain this discipline, self-discipline, for a very short period of time. Much easier to build a strong structure for support around you so that you don't rely on willpower or discipline. So for example, I had a client, and often this comes up with food. He wants to lose weight, and he's not a real big chef or anything like that. He doesn't really like cooking, and so cooking, I asked him to peel a carrot, and he thought that was too much work. I said, okay. So I suggested that he set up a structure for support that would meet his nutritional needs. And he found this food service that cooks the meals for you and delivers them so that they're prepackaged, healthy, organic food, all the right calorie counted things. He doesn't have to think about it. And it was only 36 pounds sterling a week. He's an English guy. And that was it. So he automated his food, calorie counting, his food, his nutrition. He has a more varied diet. He picks the ones he likes. He said it's delicious. He's having no trouble now sticking to a 1,200 calorie a day diet. And he's lost 4 pounds in the first week already. So instead of relying on willpower and making it difficult, he just put in place a really good structure for support. So when we work in coaching people, I spend more time building a structure for support people or helping them get that in place. Then you don't need willpower. You don't need self-discipline. So trying to rely on that is too hard. It's too much work. It's not sustainable. It doesn't last, and we want lasting results in coaching. So good. I think we've probably hit the end of our hour here, so I'm gonna say goodbye, and I'll pass you back to our hostess here. Just 1 minute. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thanks, Talane. Sorry about that. I wish we had more time. Thanks a million, Talane, for coming into us today. Lots of insightful tips. It certainly given us some food for thought. It was a pleasure having you back to the Success Series again. We hope to see you again soon. So to view any of our upcoming events, jobs, career advice, insightful blogs, please visit your local Morgan McKinley website or lecrem.ie, and follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter at Morgan McKinley or at lecrem_Ireland using the hashtags Success Series and hashtag Career Ally. If we didn't get to your questions today, please email them to events@morganmckinley.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We look forward to receiving your feedback, and thank you for tuning in today.